topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Geeks Geezers and Googlization show. I'm your host, Ira Wolf, and I'm here today with my co-host, Keith Campagna, and our sponsors today are JobVite and Success Performance Solutions. So, Keith, we're going to be talking to Enrique Rubio. He's the founder of two very cool companies. I met him, we didn't meet, or online meet, I guess is the new version of meeting. But we connected after he wrote a really cool article, which was titled, let me get this straight. Oh, do we have room in the future of work? And we meant humans. And it resonated with everything you've heard me say and what you and I have talked about it a lot. And I reached out to him, and we immediately became best pals. But he's doing some really cool things with a company called Hacking HR.
I love it.
Yeah, it's actually global. It's very cool. And he also started another company, and I may botch this up, but I think it was Cotopaxi Recruitment. We'll see how well I did when he gets on the line. And that's the first AI-based recruitment platform, all in Spanish, for Latin America.
Ooh.
So very, very cool stuff. So, yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Fantastic. It's right up my alley. I'm excited to have him on the show.
Yeah, and the other thing that really was a buzz is that he mentioned in his article about a technology refugee. And it's about how all of us seem to be living in this alternate universe of technology, and we're all sort of refugees. Everybody, even the digital natives are kind of a bit amazed, but I guess anybody older than about 14 these days seem to be, living in this technology world and figuring out how to make it work.
Well, it's interesting that I love the timeliness of him coming on the show, because one of the key elements that I try to bring out in my presentations to groups is the idea that what technology is here for is to reduce the labor that humans have to go through. And so it begs the question, what does a group of people that have done nothing except labor their whole adult lives do with extra time? So I love having these conversations because I'm always curious about what the futurists think we're going to be doing once the technology, I'll say for the sake of common discussion, takes over all the labor that needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's a full other discussion, because if you go to the deep end, and I guess to the people on the deep end, it doesn't seem like the deep end. But when you start talking with or reading and listening to Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis, those guys, they're pretty far out. They're talking about singularity. Yep. They're talking about that we will devote our time to improving life on the planet, not worrying about how to pay for a roof over our head and food.
Yep.
That's the world of abundance.
How about it? And meanwhile, we're here in the present day, trying to help HR organizations inside of companies get out of their own way. There's so much minutia. Hardly one out of, I don't know, maybe Enrique knows this, but I would say 5 out of 100 HR people know how to leverage technology so that they could do that thing we seem to be talking about more and more, Ira, and that is put the human back into human resources.
Yep.
I think that's that theme that's going to keep popping up this year.
So, I don't know if you saw the video. It didn't get a lot of views yet. I got to post it there. I think I posted it like on a Saturday afternoon, so it gets lost in the shuffle. But Jerry had sent me, my wife Jerry had sent me a couple weeks ago this video about millennials trying to use a dial phone. Did you see that?
No.
Okay, so it's a meme that's out there, and it's really cool. It was but I got it, and I actually segmented it. I shortened it up. I sort of took like 4 minutes out of the center of it, but it was actually two young guys trying to dial the old dial, not a push button, but a dial phone. And they couldn't figure out how to do it. So, it's really funny. But to me, I flipped it. And I said, so here you have a young generation that's not, who we took for granted that everybody should know how to use a dial phone. And they're saying, and one of the phrases they had was, what are the holes in the dial for? Something very, very basic. So, that was an old technology that young people were struggling with. And I went online and I found this clip of it was a news clip. And it was of a woman. They said she was 66. I hope not, because that's I'm a little older than that. But it was a news clip, and she was with her granddaughter trying to teach her how to use a smartphone. And that's the world, that's typically the world we live in, because, for a while, I mean, you're old enough to remember this with VCRs and flashing,
Sure.
Flashing lights, and it was my peers had no clue how to run it, how to set the time. And, so the technology is baffling on many different levels, regardless of your age. And that's why I love this technology refugee. I forgot to use it yesterday in my presentation. By the way, I missed you at the SHRM, Lehigh Valley SHRM meeting. We had a great, they had almost 100 people there.
Wow.
For those morning breakfasts, it's usually like 50 or maybe 60. And it wasn't the typical warm and fuzzy topic for HR. We weren't talking, but it was about people analytics.
Yeah.
And, in the past, we'd get a handful of people there for a subject like that, which also goes into our topic today of how far can that go. But we had it, and it was a great crowd, got great feedback, and excited about that. So I'm going to add that to my portfolio of presentations, because there obviously is a ton of interest in going there.
What do you think prompted? I mean, I'm feeling you to get 100 people in the Lehigh Valley market to come in, talk about and learn about analytics. There's something behind there. What did you learn from the feedback?
I mean, from the feedback was the typical that there's still a lot of learning space. There's a lot of room to grow. Mm-hmm. I think people are talking about it. One of the slides I have, this is a stat, and then maybe this is a good way to segue into Enrique here. So in a recent IBM survey, and I think it was like 1,500 CEOs, the 70% said that they are investing heavily in human capital, and human capital is is their major competitive advantage. And we've heard that for years.
Sure.
But only 5% actually were investing in big data.
I know it.
So I think what's the interest? Interest is high. It's high even when I just mentioned it. I had a chapter in my book on it. Recruiting in the age of Googlization. I mention it in my talks on recruiting, and everybody says, "Oh, can you? We'd like to learn more about that. Can you give a presentation?" But then implementations is more challenging. For that. So I think that seems to be a good way to kind of bring in Enrique here. I gave a little background there before. He started this company, Hacking HR. I get emails every day. They've got chapters all over the place, so we definitely want to talk about that. But background-wise, Enrique's an electronic engineer. Working in HR, they talk about an oxymoron there.
Right.
He has a master's in public administration from Syracuse. He's a professional project manager, scrum master, design thinker, professional, and he's originally from Venezuela. And he's also an ultra runner. So I always admire people who, I've got some cousins and son-in-law that, does, not a marathon. What's the...
Ironman?
Ironman, yeah. That's crazy stuff. I have a couple cousins that do that, know a lot of people. But even marathon, even doing a 5K these days, that seems to be massive. So ultra running's really out there. So Enrique, welcome to Geeks Geezers and Googlization.
Hi, Ira. Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for having me.
So you heard a little bit of the background, what's going on here.
Yeah.
Let's start out before we dive into this, because you and I chatted on the phone a couple weeks ago. We've gone back and forth with some emails and messages. You write some great stuff. But tell us a little. I'm fascinated by hacking HR, and one offline after the show, I'd like to know a little bit more how Keith and I can get involved with it. I don't think there's any chapter up here. I know there's one in Philly, but I think there's could be enough interest of Northeast Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley, getting something going up here.
For sure.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. And well, as you said before, my background, I come from technology. I worked 10 years in telecommunications as an electronic engineer, and then I switched to HR. And the reason why I did that is because I really like not only working with people, but also working for people. And I found that out perhaps early in my career. And what happens in electronic engineering is that you work a lot with technology. You work for people, but you don't necessarily see the connection between the work that you do and serving others. And that's why I thought that HR would be a great place for me to be. And I switched careers from, it's an oxymoron. It's true. It's, going from electronic engineering to HR. It's not a common thing these days, especially because people normally, think about their careers as, what the return on the investment is in their careers. And I think that in general, there's more return on the investment when you are working as an engineer than when you are working in HR. But anyway, here I am, and I have been in HR for about 10 years. And at the very beginning of my career, I didn't really notice or sort of understood what was happening with HR. I just thought, this is HR, this is the way we work. It's not perfect, but this is the way things are. But of course, as I grew up in this career and I evolved professionally and personally, one thing that I started seeing, particularly over the past 5 years and more specifically over the past 3 years, is that it seems that HR in general is disconnected from other business areas that are propelling the organization forward into the future of work. And I was getting really, really concerned about people and about the future of our organizations because, as you know, people, you said it before, are the most important component of any organization. We cannot go anywhere if we don't have the creative power, the talent that we need to propel our companies into the future of work. And I was getting concerned because HR was not aligned with what's happening in this new world of work. Neither is it aligned with the new theories of innovation, for example, design thinking or with agility, or with the impact of technology in the workplace. So I said, you know what, I got to do something about it because I have these two backgrounds, technology and HR. And I think I can bring people from technology, from future of work, futurists, to speak with people from HR to expand their portfolio of capabilities and skills. And that's what I started doing in September of 2017 in Washington, D.C., which is where I live. I put together a forum, and I brought futurists and I brought technologists to speak with an HR community. And it was a very, very fascinating conversation because HR people are not used to being exposed to this kind of content, right? And that was in September of 2017. And ever since, we've, of course, evolved to the place to a point right now where we have done several events all around the world. We have about 65 chapters in almost 25 countries. My goal for this year is creating 200 chapters around the world. And, just to say a couple of extra things about hacking HR is, number one is that I think that the kind of challenges that we are dealing with right now and that we are going to be dealing as we enter into this new era of work those challenges are extremely, extremely complex for any single individual, for any single HR company, for any single industry or country to resolve alone. Let me give you one example of that. McKinsey released a research last year saying that anywhere between 375 and 800 million jobs will be replaced by technology over the next 12 years. We're talking about a third of the global workforce being replaced by technology. Of course, 85%, another research shows that 85% of the new jobs that will be created in 2040 don't exist today. Right. But now that transition could be extremely complicated, and it doesn't have an isolated answer. It must have a global answer. And that's why Hacking HR is not only events, it's a global community that we're creating to bring people from HR, from technology, from business, to put their heads together and get our workplaces and our workforce ready for the future of work. So quite a long.
That is fantastic.
No, absolutely. So obviously there's a load of information in there. So let's pull it apart a little bit. First of all, and before we brought you on, Keith asked me sort of what was the, why did 100 people from the Lehigh Valley, HR professionals show up at this people analytics? In the beginning of, and this may be the answer, Keith. In the beginning of my presentation, I started, one is I showed that video of showing the two millennials and then this, the 60-year-old trying to use the comparison using a smartphone. And one is, it was just funny because everybody laughs at those things. But the other is that sort of feels where HR is right now with technology. That the old, or the young are trying to figure out the way the things were done in the past, and the old are trying to figure out how do we use technology. So it was a good bridge. But I also, I've been in this space for 24 years. I initially didn't think I was in HR industry, but I guess I am. But for as long as I've been around it, there's always been talk of HR getting a seat at the table, right? Mm. I mean, you've heard it. You both probably heard it forever. Mm-hmm. What someone said yesterday, and they didn't do it intentionally, but it all of a sudden hit me. It's not about having a seat at the table anymore. It's about having a voice at the table. And the voice at the table, some of the language, and I'd like to get your opinion on this, Enrique. Some of that comes from the analytics. It comes from the evidence, because for so long HR hasn't been reliant on technology. They feared technology, and fear of technology is healthy to a degree, but you can't avoid it. You have to be fearful and humbled by it, but figure out how to utilize it. But the analytics is almost the language that they need to get the attention of management. And I don't know if that's to transition, because the tech automation and technology alone is not going to bridge that gap. But what comes out of it, I believe will. Am I on the right path, or are we are we in the same chapter at least? Enrique?
Well, yes, I think so. And of course, I always get the same question from HR people. How do we get a seat at the table or at the table? And to me, it comes down to sort of the chicken and the egg kind of dilemma, right? Do you get a seat at the table by being invited to come to the table? Or do you get a seat at the table by delivering so much value that nobody will want to exist without you, mm-hmm. right? And by that, what I mean is that right now, I think that HR pretty much is dreaded, in most areas of the business. And, people don't like HR. And last year, there was a lot of talk about HR, and the year before, because of the rise of the Me Too movement, mm-hmm. HR not being the kind of partner that employees needed, but always being on the side of the people who were doing that were harming their organizations. So to me, what happens is that we have done the things that we're doing. We have done them in the same way for a long period of time, and we stop delivering value. We continue doing things, so we're always busy doing something, but that doesn't mean that we are actually delivering value. And to me, we won't get, in my opinion, we won't get a seat at the table as long as or a voice, as long as we don't start creating and delivering value. Now, how do we do that? I think there are a number of components, of course, out of which people analytics, in the broader sort of within the broader spectrum of technology, is one of the main components. And HR needs to be considered itself a business unit that is aligned with business priorities, that understands what the business is about, that understands what the business goals are, that is truly focusing on delivering value for its people and its business leaders. And then when you start creating such level of value, is that you can have that voice and that seat at the table. I don't think anybody's going to invite an HR person to have that quote unquote seat at the table, to have that voice, if all that the HR person is going to do is say, oh, you cannot do that because the policies don't allow that. Or, no, we cannot do that. Or, yes, I can do that, but it's going to take me 3 months. So, like that kind of approach, traditional response from HR, doesn't work anymore because we live in a world that moves extremely fast, where we have to be more fluid, more agile. And I don't think HR is mentally and mentally ready, and their mindset or our mindset is not there yet. And that's what the business is looking for in a trusted partner, in a trusted advisor. And HR needs to get there. There's, of course, a lot of concern right now, and because of Hacking HR, I speak with hundreds of people all around the world, and more people in HR are getting into this sort of wave of trying to understand what this future of work means and how to add value to remain relevant, to remain relevant and add more value and get that seat at the table. But it's still, there's a huge gap between what we're doing today and what we should be doing in order to deliver the kind of value that is required from us in HR. So I think we still have a long way to go. But I feel that there is a generation of HR practitioners. I'm not talking about age, by the way. I'm talking in general from all across the board. There's a group of HR champions that are trying to change the face of HR. They are trying to not only to put a makeup on HR, but they are really trying to go to the core of HR and re-engineering the way we do our business. And I don't know. I think with what we're doing with Hacking HR, we're being part of that group of champions trying to expand HR's capabilities to do more things than what traditionally is HR, like doing things that are not just recruitment, compensation, policy, and administration, but getting into design thinking, agility, digital transformation, understanding and designing the organization of the future, reskilling or upskilling the workforce. All those things, I think, are critical today for HR to get that voice and to be really taken into account as a trusted partner. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we might be walking in that direction, hopefully.
So coming out, maybe it's an example, maybe you have a story that came out of Hacking HR. Conceptually, we're all on board. There's no question. Yeah. And just from the show yesterday, the attendance, even for a topic like people analytics, people are interested. Mm-hmm. But when they go back to work, they even if they have that seat, they may not have that voice. What's the first step that they do? I mean, going back and showing that they have value, demonstrating that they where is Enrique? We need him in this meeting. What do they need to do to create that?
I'm going to give you one example that somebody sent me via email a couple of weeks ago. This was very interesting. This person said, I work in a telecommunications company, and my HR people here don't know what CAPEX and OPEX mean. So that to me was mind-boggling. And the reason why it was is because those are very basic concepts that I myself used very often when I worked as an electronic engineer. I have never used them in HR, which is like really, really ridiculous, so to speak. Right. So if you work in a business and you don't understand what the business is about, the jargon that the business talks about, you cannot translate what your processes, what your technology, what you want to do into numbers or ROI. it's going to be very difficult to convince the C-suite of that organization that you are capable of delivering value. Because what happens is that very often, a lot of people in many organizations know that the human component is critical, and they may feel, the connection when you come to them and say, we have to redesign our career pathing, to provide people meaningful opportunities to develop their careers in this organization. That may resonate with somebody's heart in that organization. But if you are able to say, and if we do this, we might increase our performance by 10% over the next 2 years, and that's going to imply that we're going to be bringing, X amount of dollar extra to the company, or that we're going to be creating this additional impact. If you're able to connect those two things, oh boy, you have an amazing opportunity to be heard and to be required in that C-suite table. But as long as we cannot connect what we do in HR, as long as we don't understand what OPEX and CAPEX mean in the tech world, or other concepts in other kind of organizations, it's going to be very difficult. So we need to go, it's funny because we need to go back to the very basics, and that is we need to start talking to the people in the organization and asking them, what are you doing here? Can you explain to me more about what this business is about? It sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, it's laughable, but we have to go back to the very basic and understand how our people think in our organizations, what our company is all about. And that to me is one component. Now, let me give you another component.
Okay. Hey, Enrique, hold that thought, because we're going to take a short. Yeah, we're going to take a short break here. You've been listening to the Geeks Geezers and Googlization show with our guest Enrique Rubio. We've been talking about. Well, we started to talk about. Do we have room as humans in the future of work? We started to touch on. Does HR have a voice at the table? And we're about to hear a lot more about that. So we're going to take a quick break, just about 2 minutes. We'll be right back. We're going to hear from our sponsors, JobVite and Success Performance Solutions.
Behind everything you're searching for is something you're actually looking for. When you search with the real Yellow Pages, you get more than a contractor. You get a whole new curb appeal. It's not just getting directions to a dry cleaner with YP.com. It's rescuing an old favorite from the back of the closet. And it's more than finding a locksmith with YP.com on your mobile. It's getting to sleep in your own bed. Whatever it might be, there are more ways to search and more ways to find exactly what you're looking for with the real Yellow Pages, YP.com, and YP.com on your mobile, only from AT&T.
What's up, everyone? This is Keith from the Geeks Geezers and Googlization show, powered by JobVite. JobVite knows career paths are made by people, not by open job requisitions. JobVite's platform ties recruitment marketing directly to applicant tracking and onboarding, creating continuous candidate engagement that effectively connects recruiters with qualified passive candidates. Used by over 50,000 recruiters placing over 1 million jobs, JobVite's platform impacts every company in every industry. Check us out at jobvite.com.
Listen carefully. Up to 9 out of 10 job candidates visiting your company career page leave before completing an application. You heard that right. 90% of candidates who want to apply for a job at your company don't. That's just plain crazy, especially in today's tight labor market. Candidate experience matters. Stop turning candidates away. Let Success Performance Solutions help. Call us at 800-803-4303 or register at successperformancesolutions.com/W4CY. Schedule a no-obligation consultation and get special access to insider tips to recruit faster and hire smarter.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. This is Keith Campagna with the host with the most, Ira Wolf, and a very special guest today, Enrique Rubio, who's talking about things that are just absolutely mind-blowing. And Enrique, part of the amazement that I have in listening to you talk about the transformation that needs to take place inside of HR is that we almost can tell with absolute certainty where the job market trends are going, where the technology trends are going. And the part that I think is really missing is nobody seems to know when exactly the human beings are going to figure out that they need to get in front of this change, or they're going to find themselves in a very, very difficult place. And a futurist that you and I and Ira both can appreciate, Elon Musk, I probably listen to almost every word that guy says. And part of what he says is we have a bandwidth problem. We have a human bandwidth problem where humans don't move fast enough. What are your thoughts about getting people motivated? What are your thoughts about the audience coming to terms with the fact that A, they're completely exposed to this, B, maybe there's an opportunity for them to get ahead of the curve? Where do you see all of this coming into play? Because like you mentioned, HR is never going to get their attention if all they do is talk about compliance, paid time off policies, and administrative stuff.
Yeah, that's a great, sort of connection with one of the things that I wanted to say before as well, and it is that it sounds that all the things that I'm talking about for HR are meant to sort of encourage HR to do everything for the companies that they work for. And one thing that I have been missing, and I realized about this one thing with a conversation that I had with somebody about a couple of weeks ago. This person said to me, I was working in HR for a small company. We were only 2 HR people, and I hated that company, but I needed that job. So the person told me, Enrique, if you had invited me to learn anything that would make my company better, I wouldn't have gone to that thing. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to do anything for that one company that I hated. That opened my eyes because I was thinking, you are sort of banging that nail on the head. And the reason why I say that is because all these transformations are not only going to affect our companies, they are going to affect us individually. Let me give you one example of this. Over the past couple of weeks, more than 500 brick-and-mortar retail stores shut down in the United States. Yep. How many HR people and in general people are going without jobs, are jobless now? A bunch of people. Now, my question to those HR folks that work in there, whether they love their job or they hated it, is: do you learn something, some new skills? Do you expand your portfolio of capabilities that make you employable, even after now that you're not in that sort of company anymore? So what I'm saying is that we need to get ready, not just for the sake of the survival of our companies, but for our own individual survival. So, to me, there's something that we need to perhaps acknowledge in this conversation about the future of work, and it is the difference between change and transformation, and transition, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Change is the end result of where we're going. Hopefully, we're going to have a better world where people are going to have more time to dedicate to being more creative, to their families, less transactional activities. But the transition to get there is going to be very, very complicated. And it can be very, very painful for a large number of people if they are not getting ready for what's going to be that future like. And what I think is that we need to get ready. We need to open our minds and perhaps begin by understanding that all these things that we talk about, job replacement, technology taking over jobs, countries, advancing more or faster than in technology than the United States, which has been, at the forefront of tech innovation. So all of those things we need to take into account in order to be able to effectively get ready. And connecting that to what Elon Musk has said about, we humans not being able to learn as fast as machines. He's totally right about that. But he's right about that if you are only considering things that are sort of machine-like. Let me give you one example of that. Memorizing stuff. It's going to be extremely, not extremely, but absolutely impossible for us human beings to be able to memorize the same amount of facts or data that a machine can memorize. But what a machine cannot do today is utilizing the data and using imagination to connect the dots and to create something out of it. In that sense, we still have the competitive edge. Now we have to use it. And I think that in general, people in the workforce have not sort of developed these very innate human skills like innovation, creativity, curiosity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence. And I think those elements are going to be critical as we transition to the future of work. But again, more generally, I think the challenge here and my encouragement to your listeners is you must open your mind and start looking around to see what are the things that you need to start learning to expand your portfolio's capabilities to be employable across the board, because your company may be disrupted by either other companies or by technology or, I don't know, whatever it is, that we don't know if you are going to have a job, in the future. Careers are changing right now. So if you want to remain either employable or become more as an entrepreneur, you need to expand your portfolio of capabilities. And to do that, you need to learn fast, quick, and have an open mind, to sort of embrace the kind of skills and capabilities that are not traditional in your field, so to speak, including people analytics, which is not an HR thing.
Right. And the challenge is that people don't even know how to learn how to do that.
Yeah, and now what's funny is that a lot of people come up with this idea, which I think is an excuse, that, we don't have the money to do that. You know how many resources are out there right now that are for free? The other day, I wanted to connect a microphone to my iPhone, an external microphone, and I was like, how the hell do I do this? I went to YouTube, I spent 5 minutes doing a little research, found one video, watched the video, and in 5 minutes, I learned how to do it. So there are no excuses not to learn today, as simple as that.
Yeah, we had just 2 weeks ago, we had Summer on, Keith. Yep. Time flies when we're having fun. Yeah, Summer Solomonson. Yeah. And we were talking about micro-learning, and I used one of the examples we had yesterday when it was like, how do you, and again, going back to the people analytics, how do you learn about people analytics? And sure, there's, every college has a course. The night before, today's Wednesday, so a Monday night, got an email from Coursera. And Coursera has an analytics course at University of Pennsylvania, which is kind of one of the schools I graduated from, but which had nothing to do with that. But you could go up to Coursera, but you can audit it for free. I mean, there's no cost. Yeah. So people can learn how to do that, and that's just one example. But going back to again, there were the learning experience yesterday, and what we were talking about, the skills that are required, and that's what you were talking about, Enrique. It's what's, and I'm going to go to the example of people analytics because I know I know I'm deep in the research on that. The 6 skills that are required for people analytics. HR is part of it, but so is psychology, so is business acumen, consulting, communication, and data science. And when you ask anyone, what do you think of the skills? And typically you hear, well, I'm not very good, from HR is, well, I went in HR because I'm not very good with math. Mm-hmm. Well, that's, or engineering or statistics, and that's part of the data science and to some degree part of the psychology. But the reality is as a consultant, and you're a PMP. I mean, you're a project manager. Those are skills that you need to be able to do this. But communication. I mean, for all that's said about technology, and we're becoming less human and robotic, and we don't talk to one another. What I heard you saying just a minute ago was communication is the machines will learn faster, they will digest the information, they will come up with numbers and stats faster than we as humans ever can. But someone's got to tell the story. Someone has got to translate that data, those results, to the people. And that ultimately is the role that will put H back in HR, or keep H in HR. Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, a storytelling, I mean, you don't have to be, Burl Ives to do this, for those who remember Burl Ives. But, I mean, or Robin Williams, I mean, you have to be a storyteller. Yeah. And I think that's a big piece of it.
Yes, and it is that storytelling. It's a very human element, right? It's what people used to call, like, very in a very disgraceful way. They used to call them the soft skills. They are not soft skills. Actually, they are more difficult than learning math, I think. because creativity, imagination, empathy, curiosity, critical thinking, judgment, coordination, collaborating with others, and telling the story about something using data. Those are very complicated capabilities. Those are very complicated skills. We have them innately. I think only that we lose them when we go to formal school, when we get into this box that we call workplace, and we lose the ability to use those skills. Now, are they going to be critical in the future? Yes, and the reason is simple, because machines are going to be processing all the data. I mean, nobody cares about you or anybody processing data and creating Excel spreadsheets. Machines are going to be able to do that in seconds, or nanoseconds. Now, what happens with the data is that you got to use your creativity in order to draw conclusions from that data and tell the story behind it, because we are drowning in a sea of data, both utilized and unutilized data, and the difference will not be made by those who are just leveraging the data, but those who are telling the story the data is telling you in order to drive business decisions coming from that data. And those skills that are needed to do that, those are, in my opinion, not the hard kind of technical skills like math or physics or engineering or any of those things. And I think that that's why when you look at the Institute for the Future, the World Economic Forum, McKinsey, Deloitte, all these big research firms, all of the skills that they are dubbing as the most important skills to transition into the future of work, when you read those skills, you barely find any of them that is a hard technical skill. You don't find you need to be an engineer to do this, or you need to be a mathematician to do this. What they say is you need to have empathy to tell the story of that data. You need to have the capacity for critical thinking, because you are going to be dealing with very complex, volatile, and chaotic kind of challenges. And you need to utilize your very human nature and human skills in order to translate those complex challenges, utilizing data and technology, into something that makes sense for the business. So I think it's funny because we are getting into a more technologically advanced sort of era, but at the same time, we humans are going back to the basic of humanity. So isn't that funny that, technology is going to a more complicated stage, whereas we humans are being called to go to a more basic stage of what being human means. So I think it's fascinating, honestly.
So I just wanted to mention to the audience that Enrique and I realized we were going to be at the same conference at the end of the month. And Enrique, I mean, I know we said we were going to get a cup of coffee, but we might wind up doing more than that, just based off of the rabbit hole that I know I'll go down with you.
Absolutely. HR Transform, can we say the name, right? We can say the name, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So from the communication aspect too, I mean, one of the things that we talked about that's required, I mean, the biggest danger and the biggest fear and the horror stories you hear about predictive analytics, which really isn't the loss of jobs and the robotics and the automation, but it's the numbers sort of dictating our lives and then there's a whole privacy issue. But one of the things that HR's kind of role should be to be that storyteller. But in order to make all this work, there has to be a high degree of authenticity and transparency. Otherwise there's just a fear of information that Big Brother is collecting, and. In order to do that, they have to be the better communicators. I mean, HR is positioned to have that role, because they're the role that typically is to represent, should be the advocates for the workforce, for the employees. But they got to become better than that and move away from that they're the compliance cops. All the time. Yeah. So it's you're right. It's absolutely amazing that the more advanced technology become, the more real humans need to become. And I think for a while, humans became pretty robotic in a lot of their functions.
Yeah, and we still are, I think, in general.
Hey, we knew this ahead of time that this was going to go pretty fast. We got about 5 minutes left here, 6 minutes. I do want to talk to, tell us kind of a little bit of, we mentioned, how many chapters. There's, 60 chapters of 62 chapters of Hacking HR. Tell us a little bit about some of the events. I mean, what happens there, who should attend. Going to give it a little bit of background on that.
Sure, absolutely. We are
and quick and concisely, because we only have 5 minutes. I know you can talk a lot. Yeah. I know you can talk an hour on this, though, or more.
I can. I'm gonna say pretty quickly. We are creating local communities around the world, what we call chapters, and basically what we're doing is bringing people together in a community format. So anybody is invited to participate in these communities in the Hacking HR chapters, and what we're doing is bringing people together to discuss topics that are at the intersection of future of work, technology, business, and people. And the chapters not only get together, but they organize meetups that can talk about design thinking, agility, blockchain, artificial intelligence, culture, talent, different things that are in this intersection. My goal for this, we have a little bit more than 60 chapters now. I think we have about 65 chapters in 24 countries. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be creating like 10 more. My goal for this year is to have 200 chapters around the world. And if anybody's interested in knowing more about, whether we have a chapter in your city, or if not, if we can create a chapter, just please get in touch with me. And I am happy to provide guidance in that sense. But the idea here is sort of twofold. Number one, connecting people at a local base, or at a local level, and then connecting those local communities or local chapters in a global format, so that we can put our heads together globally to solve complex challenges that won't be resolved at the individual or local level. So it's pretty exciting what we're doing with Hacking HR, and I encourage everybody to participate.
And anybody in HR, business, who's it open to?
Anybody. Actually, the more diversity is, the better, because one thing that has happened with HR is that we created this echo chamber where we do events about HR and only people from HR participate. So you're only validating what you already know, right? So we need to have an open-minded to people from technology, business, finance, entrepreneurs, and whatnot to participate in these conversations. So the chapters are open to anybody, no matter the level in which you are, whether junior or very senior, no matter whether you're in HR or not, you are all welcome to participate.
Excellent. And how can everyone get in touch with you? Give a couple of different ways that they can do that, whether they just want to reach out to you or they can want to get information about Hacking HR. What's the best ways to do that?
Sure. For Hacking HR in general, they can go to the website, which is hackinghr.io. That's www.hackinghr.io. By the way, today is the 30th birthday of the World Wide Web. Yep. So 30 years. So anyway, hackinghr.io, and then they can get in touch with me via my LinkedIn, which is my main means of communication, and just look up Enrique Rubio, and probably I'm going to be the first person coming up in there.
And we'll have all that posted on the blog, on the when this goes out to the podcast. It'll be on iTunes, iHeart, Google Play, Spotify. So we will have most of that, at least some way for you to get contacted. And know we're limited on characters when we do that, but it will be posted on the website as well. And we'll be promoting this all over social media. So appreciate it very much. Enrique, this, again, just like our conversation a couple weeks ago, this was incredibly fast moving. A million other questions I've got. I'm sure we will be continue to be in touch, and hopefully one of these days we'll actually meet. Keith, sounds like you're going to meet first.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your time, Enrique.
Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, Keith, any final closing words in our last minute here this week?
No, I mean, all things considered, I'm blown away with the opportunity to do this again. I do want to caution everybody out there that the first things first, you got to take time to recognize where your strengths and your weaknesses are. Figure out that now is a perfect opportunity for you as an individual to grow and develop. Like Enrique said, I call it, it's YouTube, baby. It's a YouTube life. You can learn anything you want, and, I'm glad to be a part of the show again, Ira. Thanks.
Yeah, the thing is, hey, is my employer going to pay for it? Doesn't work anymore because now it's free. Nobody has to pay for a lot of it. I mean, there's still valued courses that you should pay for, but there's no excuse for at least getting the basics, most of this. Yep. So, hey, we really want to thank Enrique Rubio from Hacking HR. That's hackinghr.io if you want to go look at the website. Great guest, ton of things we talked about, future work. Next week, we're going to be talking with Jeff Godhealth. He's the author of a new book called Sense and Respond. I loved it. I wrote a couple things about it. It's going to probably give people some tips how to get how to take advantage of what we talked about today. So excited about talking with Jeff. It'll be just as fast-paced show as this was. Lot of good information.
Excellent.
So until next week, you've been listening to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show, where we bring you topics and thought leaders discussing a future of work where the tired, the wired, and technology converge. Until next Wednesday and every Wednesday after that, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY.com, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and a whole bunch of other podcasts. This is your host, Ira Wolf, and my co-host, Keith Compagna. Don't let the shift hit your plans.